finding out who is and who isn't. Watch this clip.
Leave him alone. You guys cannot do that. That's illegal. Call 911. Call 911. They're doing kidnapping. That's illegal. Leave him alone. Leave him alone.
Smile at me, sir. Smile at me, ma'am.
Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. You guys are doing kidnapping. Kidnapping. This is called kidnapping. Kidnapping. This is kidnapping. Call 911. Naima, call 911. Piece of work. This is called kidnapping.
This is called kidnapping, Jim. But it just shows you that they're moving in harder on Minnesota, which has had a huge number of Somalis come in. That's not been recently, not just under Biden. I mean, it's been happening for years now.
You know, it's actually been happening for 100 years, at least when you think about some of the Muslim community in Dearborn, Michigan, where Henry Ford I had hired a lot of people from Muslim countries because they were good workers. But it's not like everybody that came in was bad. But listen, the reality is we've got a massive problem. And the left and Democrats want to make a narrative that they hope can build up because they do want to replace our population with people from other countries. Let's just lay aside the fact that was never a conspiracy theory. Democrats are absolutely determined to replace our population with people that are not American in their outlook. And there are people from Somalia illegally in Minnesota. I am certain of it. And they have every right to do it. But the narrative they want to put out is that this is somehow kidnapping. That is the most bogus thing that I've ever heard in my life. If you are here illegally, ICE can detain you. And you do not have the same scope of rights and due process that Americans have because you're not an American. And so this includes people with green cards, people that are here legally. Under a green card system, they don't have the same scope of rights or the same due process when things might come up if their legal status is being abused or misused. So again, Tom Homan is thankfully not wavering on this. He's not going to back off. Here's the real issue. Mayorkas, the previous DHS secretary, was illegally bringing in people at a mass scale, and even worse, Joe Biden and Mayorkas have built up the largest sex trafficking operation that existed in human history. They were authorizing it, legitimizing it, and encouraging it in their actions. So I don't want some Somali person who doesn't like the fact that someone she knows might be here illegally telling me how bad her situation is when we've got a massive situation of sex trafficking, of general human trafficking, and of massive replacement of Americans for the benefit and purpose of Democrat politicians alone. That's all that they're doing, and this is another reason why I say the Democrat Party is not an American party.
Yeah, and they've totally taken over parts of Minnesota. They've even got the Minnesota state flag changed to represent the Somali flag.
It's absolutely absurd. And listen, I love immigration. Let me just put it this way: I'm all fine for people coming here from other countries and being able to pursue the American dream. Our problem is Democrats have destroyed this system. They've allowed abuse of the legal means of coming across. And they encourage most of that. The H-1B program is one of them, amongst others. But they've also facilitated the incursion of tens of millions of people who are here illegally, who ought not to be here. Not all of whom are bad people, but every one of them illegally here. And it's causing a massive strain and stress on our country that needs to stop. And Donald Trump needs to maintain his aggressiveness. Thank goodness Tom Homan is there because it's getting done.
Yep. And we have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tracking some of the money that has been sent overseas now. He's saying they have confirmed that money has been sent overseas. And here's a clip of him discussing it here on this interview.
That money has gone overseas, and we are tracking that both to the Middle East and to Somalia to see what the uses of that have been.
Okay, but you have no evidence of that money being used to fuel terrorism at this point, which is what some conservative writers are alleging.
That's why it's an investigation. We started it last week. We'll see where it goes. But I can tell you that, it's terrible. Representative Omar tried to downplay it, said, oh, it was very, it was very tough to know how this money should be used. Yeah. She was gaslighting the American people.
Well, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, but when you come to this country, you got to learn which side of the road to drive on. You got to learn to stop at stop signs, and you got to learn not to defraud the American people. That money has gone.
Well, there you go. So he confirms that money has gone overseas, and I don't know if that's going directly to Somalia or where overseas. I'm guessing Somalia, right?
It doesn't matter where it's going. This fraud, this is billions of dollars. And now some estimates saying $8 billion that we're going through these federally funded programs to enrich people who were not using the money for what it was intended to be used for at all. I mean, in one instance, we had one organization there in Minnesota that reported they fed 40,000 children and they didn't feed one of them, and they kept the money. So listen, the worst case scenario is it is going to the Boko Haram terrorists in Somalia. But even if that's not happening, this is fraud on a massive scale. Mm-hmm. And this is not the only place this kind of fraud is happening. You're starting to hear this narrative. Oh, yeah, it's gone so bad in Minnesota. No, it's this bad everywhere. It's this bad in money that's going directly from the federal government, not sponsored by state programs. It's bad with money coming from the federal government going into state programs. It's bad taxpayer monies that are coming from taxpayers in states going into the state programs. Like, there is fraud on a massive scale. So I would have told what's-her-face on CBS News to shut her mouth. I'm surprised Bessent was as calm as he was, because it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the key factor is it does matter if it's going to terrorists, but the key factor is that fraudulent money is passing through the hands of individuals and going outside the country. That fraud is nearly as bad as it going to terrorists, because they're stealing, literally raping the American people of their money and giving it to foreign actors who are pushing the money abroad. It's an outrage.
Yeah.
And that these news programs can't be outraged by it and sympathetic with Scott Bessent, who's talking about it, is crazy. Yeah, sure, ask tough questions, but come on. This is massive fraud.
Yeah, and if it is going to Somalia, the odds are pretty high that it's landing some of it, at least some of it is landing in terrorist pockets. It ain't
being used for any good purpose,
yeah.
I can tell you that, if it's going to Somalia.
Yeah.
If it's a terrorist purpose, that's the worst case scenario. If it's just enriching people over there, with our money, with money that I paid in taxes, that's nearly as bad. Yep. It's an outrage. People should be screaming from the rooftops. People should be going to jail. Even the Trump administration is not pushing hard enough on this. And I'm thankful for the work of Scott Bessent, who's a rock star. Howard Lutnick's been excellent. Marco Rubio's been really good on these issues. Donald Trump himself has. But get aggressive and throw people in jail. This has got to happen.
Yep. And to show that it's not just Minnesota, I mean, we have Mamdani, who's about to, I don't know when he comes into office, but he'll be coming into office soon. And he's putting out videos telling illegals how to evade ICE and what to do if ICE comes to your door. Watch this.
ICE attempted to raid Canal Street and detain our immigrant neighbors. As mayor, I'll protect the rights of every single New Yorker, and that includes the more than 3 million immigrants who call this city their home. But we can all stand up to ICE if you know your rights. If you encounter ICE, these are the things that every New Yorker should know. First, ICE cannot enter into private spaces like your home, school, or a private area of your workplace without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. That looks like this. If ICE does not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge, you have the right to say, I do not consent to entry, and the right to keep your door closed. Sometimes ICE will show you paperwork that looks like this and tell you that they have the right to arrest you. That is false. ICE is legally allowed to lie to you, but you have the right to remain silent. If you're being detained, you may always ask, am I free to go, repeatedly until they answer you. You are legally allowed to film ICE as long as you do not interfere with an arrest. It is important to remain calm during any interaction with ICE or law enforcement. Do not impede their investigation, resist arrest, or run. One last thing. New Yorkers have a constitutional right to protest. And when I'm made...
All right, well, there you go. He says he stands for all New Yorkers. I guess that even includes New Yorkers who aren't even American citizens. I mean,
much of what he said is wrong anyway. If you are here illegally, particularly if you have committed a crime, but anyone that's here illegally does not have a Miranda right. They do not have it's not entirely necessary for ICE to have a warrant to go into a home of a person who's here illegally. If they own that home, there's no need to get a warrant for that. If that home is owned by an American citizen, yeah, you would have to get a warrant for that. But the fact is that there's not a warrant problem because they're getting the warrants. Tom Homan's getting the warrants to go into these locations and get these people. So Mamdani is doing a combination of giving bad and false information as well as stirring it up, giving the perception that it's a worse problem than it is. You just cannot countenance the fact that the law is very clear. If you're here illegally committing a crime, you are going out of this country. If you're here illegally and not committing a crime, even if you are a productive citizen who's doing things well, you do not have a right to be here. Now, we can decide as a matter of policy, the Trump administration can, how he wants to handle those particular situations with productive individuals who are here illegally. But the reality is you can be sent out of this country. There is a process for which that can happen, and it does not include the same due process rights as Americans. It is at best for someone here illegally a hearing by an immigration judge. And it's a quick hearing, and it almost in every instance leads to extraction of that person illegally. And it's a very clean process. So everything he's saying is false and wrong. And again, it's just another evidence. Democrats are trying to replace American society with people who are not part of American society so that they can change American society. That's their goal. They are an un-American party. They're illegal in the way that they act. They are definitely immoral in everything that they do on the immigration issue. The immorality in the Democrat Party on the immigration issue is an outrage. There are some Republicans that are immoral about this too. Not too many, thankfully. But Mamdani is giving a false representation of what reality is, and we need to push back.
Yep. Well, we're coming up on a break. We'll be back here in just a moment with more news.
We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
All right, welcome back from the break. Jim, do you know who Senator John Curtis is?
Is he a state senator?
He is I don't think so. I think he's a senator. Utah County Democrats elected. No, that's an old article. Well, anyways, a Republican senator, Republican John Curtis out of Utah. He was a chair of the Utah County Democrat Party before he switched parties so he could have a shot at congressional seat in 2017. So he switched. Oh,
yeah, he's new. Yeah.
So he switched from Democrat to Republican, and now he's out on CNN saying this.
The best thing I can do is set my example. And I think all of us need to wake up every morning, look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? What am I doing specifically today to make this country a better country, to make all of our immigrants feel more welcome? That's what we've always had. And I think if more of us would do that, it would matter less what individuals said.
All right. Well, we need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves how we can make immigrants feel more welcome every day.
Hey, Senator John Curtis, I got a message for you. I do not care about the feelings of people who are here illegally. I do care about them as individual human beings, and I do have some concern for that. But the reality is my concern comes from the fact that they need to be extracted from this country. They are not here legally. We must have a clean border or we do not have a country. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there is a human factor here. But just like if I raised two boys, if either of them got out of line and got defiant and started acting in ways that would be harmful to them, both in the short and long run, they're getting punished. I care about them as human beings. They were my sons, and they got punished. So, listen, this care of human beings thing is just an outrage, the way that it's presented. We do not let things go because someone's a human being. If there's wrong being done, the appropriate action must be taken. This is so absurd and so stupid. I don't care if he's a former Democrat or not. Maybe he's conservative generally in the way he thinks right now. But we have in this culture a massive problem of injustice. And that injustice largely comes from emotional tactics that politicians use to make us feel sorry for people we ought not feel sorry for. Mm-hmm. The Democrats do this with trying to build special rights, for example, for transgender people. We're supposed to feel sorry for young people who want to transition, but they're too young to understand whether that's necessary, but yet we push it on them behind parents' back anyway. Listen, I'm concerned about the emotional state of that young child, but there's no way that they should be given transition drugs or have their breasts or genitals mutilated to move them to a different status when we know that truth says God created them male and female. We don't just know that because Scripture says that. We know that because that's all of genetic science shows that this is the case. So listen, this attitude of letting people get by with wrongdoing just because we're supposed to be nice to them, sorry, I ain't buying it. It's absurd. It's an absurd argument.
Well, another question is how many people, and I'm not saying this is, for sure, but how many people are like him who switched to be in the Republican Party who aren't really Republicans? They're just switching to be able to win a seat in a certain county where you have a higher chance of winning if you're a Republican. And they're getting elected and then they're not running, they're not doing what they ran on or voting for conservative values or upholding, what they ran on.
Well, it goes many ways. Like Senator Jim Justice, former governor of West Virginia, he changed to from a Democrat to Republican to become governor there, and then subsequently he's become a U.S. senator. He's been a solid supporter of Donald Trump. I mean, I'm not a big fan of his voting record, but I don't, he's been faithful to Republican Party as far as I can tell. I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about people who compromise their beliefs in general. There are many people in leadership positions in Congress who have been Republicans all their lives who act like Democrats.
Yeah.
So those people are just as bad. I'm looking at the policy issues. Listen, if someone like for example, Elon Musk, even though I think he's not changed a whole lot in his political opinion. I think he has changed his political opinion to some degree because he's learned more about what's going on and he's acted accordingly. But the reality is, I'm all for someone changing their mind. The question is, what do you stand for? And what Senator Curtis just said there is an absolutely illegitimate argument. We don't sit around. Government is not about making people feel good. Government is about justice, period. And if government is not promoting justice in a country, it is not fulfilling its duty. And he and every other elected representative who take an oath to the Constitution should be getting their mind on justice and not having a primary consideration of people's feelings. Dealing with people's feelings is what the culture does. It's not what politicians are about. They're supposed to act justly. And Curtis is promoting an unjust behavior in the American Republic, and he needs to be reprimanded for it.
Yep. Well, in other news, we have Gavin Newsom. He was at a New York Times event. It looks like, New York Times. And listen to what he had to say.
We have a party that I think needs to design and develop a compelling economic vision for the future where people feel included, to reconcile the fact that if we don't democratize our economy, we're not going to save democracy. And I don't think it's healthy that we have 10% of people that own 2/3 the wealth in this country. I don't think it's sustainable practice. The folks watching Mr. Beast, disproportionately 30-year-olds, the first generation in history not doing better than their parents. There's some underlying issues here that have to be addressed. We have an economy that is broken for too many people. We have a party that...
So let me just throw in on this quickly. You want to democratize an economy? Then have free markets. Get rid of government regulation, remove the footprint of government in America, and let people decide how they're going to live their lives.
That's not
then have fair rules of the road. So if people break laws or they act in an unjust manner towards others, that there's a very simple and effective way for a person to go into a court of law and seek a redress of their problems and make the loser pay. So if you've got a big actor who makes a lot of money, there's that. So anyway, that's the first part of it. Here's the second part of it. Listen, Elon Musk doesn't have a bank account with, $400 billion that he's worth right now. He doesn't have a bank account with that money sitting there. All he has is ownership to stock in companies. If he wants to convert that into cash, then there are a lot of consequences to that. If he wanted to take a lot of that money out of those businesses, first of all, that would be a stupid thing to do for him and for everyone else, because he would have the cash, but he would have that cash would go away, and any productive capacity in his life would get frittered away in that money going into cash. He keeps it in the business because it keeps the business going. And by doing that, he creates hundreds of thousands of jobs. He brings tax revenue into the federal government. This idea, this anti-billionaire thing, is largely based on stupidity. Here's my concern. I'm not worried about the billionaires who own stock. They're not the ones that concern me. Jamie Dimon is someone who concerns me. Jamie Dimon isn't a big stock owner. He's just paid a lot of money to run a large bank. A bank that gets special consideration by government action, particularly through the Federal Reserve, because if they make bad decisions, then the government and the Federal Reserve in particular is going to bail them out. I don't get that. If I make a mistake, the federal government's not going to come bail me out. In the 2008 financial crisis, we spent about $800 billion of taxpayer money to bail out large banks, while at the same time, the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, was closing down small banks. This was happening at the very same time that TARP bill passed. We had at the time 14,000 chartered banks in this country. Do you know how many we have today? 4,000. Many of them shut down and consolidated into other banks by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation while we bailed out Jamie Dimon's company. So I don't want to hear this bull crap about billionaires being so bad. Billionaires invest in economies. Bankers provide a means for investment. And I'm not against banks, but the big banks get special consideration, so small banks go out of business so that they get all of it. That's corporatism. It's antithetical to American society. And if Gavin Newsom wants to democratize our economy, then what he needs to do is push for getting rid of corporatism, which he endorses in his own state, because all of the special companies that he throws money at that are so-called pro-climate companies, well, they're destroying the climate, frankly. They're not helping it. And they're getting a whole bunch of cash from his government. That's what's the problem with a lack of democratization. To democratize an economy is to let people freely operate within it. And Gavin Newsom does not stand for that.
Yep. Well, Adam Schiff, I guess he went on some podcasts recently, and he's saying that under Biden, they didn't go after Trump hard enough. They didn't go after him fast enough to get him put in prison, and he blames Attorney General Merrick Garland for being too darn nonpartisan. He blames the Attorney General for not being so partisan. Watch this.
Higher ups. Why did Merrick Garland move so slowly? What about his character or tactics or strategy led him to behave that way?
The Justice Department in the first Trump was abused and made partisan. And he wished to restore the department's reputation for independence. Now, what they did in the first Trump Justice Department is peanuts compared to today. But nevertheless, Merrick Garland wanted to restore the reputation of the department for strict nonpartisanship. And that made him very reluctant to pursue an investigation of the president. Too reluctant. Ultimately, that gave the Supreme Court the time it needed to drag things out further and make the case against Trump go away completely when it could have been brought to fruition. And we might be in a very different place.
Okay, yeah, the first Trump administration weaponized the DOJ so hard against Hillary for all her crimes and went after Obama and tried throwing Obama in jail, right, Jim?
When you see an evil, demonic liar like Adam Schiff talking like he does, it's just you get a sense of how evil is. There's a belief that demons have pointy tails and horns on their head, right? The Bible's pretty clear. Satan comes as an angel of light. The idea we have of demonic forces is entirely wrong in this culture for a lot of people, because the demonic force comes across as something seemingly very reasonable and proper. Well, sorry, both Merrick Garland and, sorry to disappoint someone who doesn't know better, but both Merrick Garland and Adam Schiff are influenced by these angel of light demonic forces. Adam Schiff's a proven liar. He lied about the Russia hoax over and over again. All the evidence is there, and yet he brazenly makes that statement there. And Merrick Garland, we know for a fact, was coordinating with Jack Smith, coordinating with the lawsuits in Atlanta, because the people were visiting them, coordinating with Alvin Bragg's investigation in New York, and he was being influenced and coming across as an angel of light, in that demonic angel of light as well. This is what these people do. They sit around and lie to your face. They twist truth and turn it over on its head. And then they do evil things that in a way that seems so reasonable and thoughtful, but are intended for evil. Mm-hmm. I say many, many times that for all of Donald Trump's faults, whatever you want to point out to him, the difference between him and people like George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and maybe even to a certain degree Joe Biden, is they seem to come across as the proper people who, they have good families, and they follow the way that you're supposed to do things. But I would maintain that whatever someone wants to point out wrong that Donald Trump ever did, they will not point out the massive evil that happened in the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Biden administration. George W. Bush created the Patriot Act, which has taken away most of our civil rights. Barack Obama used it and abused our civil rights, even to the point of sending a drone out to kill an American citizen. I mean, just think about that. He was using military assets to kill American citizens. And then he stirred up racism in our country. And then Joe Biden, he began the censorship industrial complex, which Joe Biden put on steroids during his administration, and many other things he was doing, including through Merrick Garland, to undermine our justice system. Adam Schiff is such a liar. He's the front face of an evil that we need to extract in this country.
Yep. Pencil neck, as Trump calls him.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we're out of time. We'll be back tomorrow with another report. Go to theconservativecaucus.org, theconservativecaucus.org, and worldviewtube.com. Take care.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house. Very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, you know, I know you and Brandon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed. Tonight on the Worldview Report, more fraud uncovered by Somali refugees, and it's expanding beyond just Minnesota. We'll show you how at least one state is moving forward with plans for a digital ID. And it's not just California or New York or some other diehard blue state. The former head of the CDC says the COVID shots should be permanently removed from the market due to safety concerns. Another American gets attacked by an illegal alien on a Charlotte, North Carolina light rail train. And the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices votes in favor of eliminating the universal recommendation that all newborns are subjected to a hepatitis B vaccine at birth. All these stories and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening, and welcome to the Worldview Report. Leading off tonight, we have a breaking news story about Somali refugees committing fraud, not just in Minnesota, but also in the state of Maine. Steve Robinson, editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, he broke the story. Robinson, in an interview with Newsmax, said that a refugee from Somalia came to America, started a nonprofit, and opened a multi-million-dollar migrant care service agency. He added, quote, he's getting over $5 million per year from American taxpayers, being given no-bid contracts from Maine Governor Janet Mills, and is building a military in Somalia. He has been funneling money back to Somalia to build a military in Somalia. The guy is running a migrant services agency that bills Maine Care, which is what we call Medicaid, about $5 million a year, end quote. He used the money reportedly raised in the U.S. to buy weapons, munitions, and supplies for a paramilitary force he had hoped to lead as the chief warlord of a state in southern Somalia. Here's Robinson with the rest of the story, including the involvement of Maine's Democrat governor, Janet Mills. Watch this.
Let's introduce you to Somali-American Abdullah Ali, who came to the U.S. from Somalia in 2009. You're looking at, obviously, the man on my right who had discovered this story. He became a U.S. citizen, started a nonprofit to help immigrants, started several businesses, including a multi-million-dollar migrant care service agency, and in 2024, he ran for president as he raised money to bankroll a militia in Somalia. Yes, you heard that right. A U.S. citizen who, according to the Maine Wire, gave an interview with Kenyan media in which he said he raised money in the U.S. to buy weapons, munitions, and supplies for paramilitary force he had hoped to lead as the president of Jubaland. Yes, that is a real state in Somalia. He was running for president in Somalia. Of course, he lost the election. We reached out to the Gateway Community Services in Maine, which Ali founded, did not hear back, ironically enough. The man who broke this report, editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, Steve Robinson, dude, this is crazy.
You really can't make this stuff up. I mean, the guy's running a migrant services agency that bills Maine Care, which is what we call Medicaid, about $5 million a year. At the same time that he's running for president, and to be clear,
in Somalia,
that he's running to be the warlord of Jubaland. Elections in Jubaland aren't exactly like elections in America. It's, whoever has the most guns is able to certify the election. So he needed to buy a paramilitary organization and paramilitary support in order to win that election, and he lost it. But at the very same time that he was in Jubaland and Kenya trying to become a warlord in southern Somalia, he was getting no-bid contracts from the administration of Governor Janet Mills, a Democrat who has been in cahoots with Gateway Community Services from the very beginning. So if there's one